Hello, my name is Jim McGillivray and this is the Pipe Box, your source for all things piping. If you find this video useful, please give it a like and please subscribe to this YouTube channel to see more videos like this. We're going to go over some music today, and you can print out this music by going back to the description of this video on my YouTube channel. You'll see a link to a PDF there. Today I would like to do with you a beginner level pibroch called The Company's Lament. It's a fairly short tune and it's not difficult to play by pibroch standards. In fact, it's one of our easiest tunes and a great starter tune if you're just getting into pibroch. A version of this tune first appears in Joseph MacDonald's book around 1760. Joseph published the first pipe music in staff notation, making this one of the earliest pibrochs to be recorded in staff notation that we know of. Here you can see Joseph's score. The ground is a little bit different from what we play today, but the rest of the tune is pretty much the same. Joseph calls it March for a Beginner. William Ross, the Queen's piper, and not to be mistaken with Willie Ross, the great Scots Guards pipe major, published Joseph's version of this tune in his 1869 book, calling it the Black Watch Salute. General Thomason, the great pibroch compiler, would publish it again in the 1890s, the same version as the Isle of Skye. However, he would also publish The Company's Lament in the same book. Here we see the score to Thomason's Company's Lament. Thomason created his own code of abbreviations for notating pibroch. He was able to put entire tunes on a sheet of paper 8 inches by 4.5 inches. Unfortunately, Thomason's code never really caught on, and his book became primarily reference material. This is the version of The Company's Lament that we played today. But where did Thomason get it? Thomason got it from the great Angus Mackay, the compiler and arranger of so many of the pibroch we played today. Here is what the tune looks like in Angus Mackay's manuscript, noted down close to 200 years ago. Did Angus compose the ground to correspond with the variations in Joseph MacDonald's March for a Beginner? Perhaps. We may never know. Let's have a look at the Pibroch Society version of this tune, which is the one we'll be studying today. The tune has a ground, called the Erler, and 5 variations on the theme that is laid out in the ground. The only complex technique in the tune are torluas and crunluas. I have videos on torluas and crunluas on this YouTube channel, so you might want to check in with these first. Today we're going to go over the ground of this tune, variation 1 and variation 1 doubling. In the next video, we'll do the tripling, torlua, and crunlua variations. Let's start by listening to the ground and the transition into the first variation. In all of the recordings in this video, I will play for you not only the variation that we are discussing, but I will play the transitions into that variation and the transitions out. Transitions between variations are extremely important in pibroch. As I hope you can hear, pibroch is relatively slow, but pipers often overdo the slowness. As we'll see later, pibroch happens in phrases just like light music, 2-bar phrases. And it's important that these phrases hang together. If we play the tune too slowly, the phrase gets spread out and kind of dissipated over time and loses its unity. So we must make sure we play the tune with some tempo and don't get caught up in the slowness. In bar 1, we're going to deal with a piece of technique called a rodin, R-O-D-I-N. It's a grip from C down to low A with a B grace note, much like you see in the third part of Lochenside. Nice and open, it doesn't have to be a quick movement. Also in bar 1, the first note is a 16th note. The second note is a dotted 8th. We're not going to play that 16th note too short. Don't crush it. Something like this. And that's bar 1. Bar 2 is a double echo on E. Double echo is a phrase you should remember because there are double echoes everywhere in pibroch. There are lots of them in this tune. They can appear on any note in the scale virtually, but in this tune we see them primarily on E and F. So a double echo on E looks like this. A quick strike followed by, I guess, what you might call a very slow strike with a longer low A in the strike. That's bar 2. Bar 3, I want to bring your attention to the 2 16th notes in bar 3. We're not going to play these the same length, and this is fairly typical of pibroch as well, remembering that the music is only a guide. The first 16th note in bar 3 we're going to play quite short. The second one is what we call a passing note, and we're going to give it a little bit more length. So here is bar 3. That's bar 4, and that's all of line 1. Line 1 is then repeated. In line 2, bar 1, different notes but very similar expression to the first bar in line 1. So line 2, bar 1. We see the second 2 notes in that bar are written as even 8th notes. We play the C shorter and the low A longer, almost like there were a cut on the C. Bar 2 is an F double echo. This is the other double echo we're going to see in this tune in addition to the E's. Very similar. Bar 3 in line 2, the first 2 8th notes, written the same length, we're not going to play them the same length. We're going to play that little couplet as if the F were dotted and the E were cut, like this. And the E 8th note at the end of bar 3 is a passing note. So bar 3 and 4. Line 3, hold the high A, and the C at the end of bar 1 is a passing note again. 3, again, we'll have short notes that are slightly different lengths. That's pretty much the ground. Nothing too complex. Now that you know what I'm trying to do with it, let's listen to the whole ground again. Let's have a look at one more thing in the ground. Here you see the ground and first variation in doubling with some prominent red lines cutting down the length of the page. These red lines mark the breaks between phrases in the tune. Just like light music, our phrases are 2 bars in length. When you get to the end of the phrase, you want the slightest, most subtle pause before you start the next one. At the ends of the lines, you can give that pause even a bit more. But remember, it's very, very subtle. Don't hit your listeners over the head with it. Just a very subtle pause, something like this. This phrasing applies not only in the ground, but in the rest of the tune, and we will talk about that more as we proceed. Let's have a look at variation 1 now. As you can see, the double echoes on E and F appear in their same places as in the ground. Only bars 1 and 3 in each line are different. Your tempo, and this is important, will be very slightly faster than the ground. Let's listen to the transition from the ground into variation 1, the whole of variation 1, and then the transition into the doubling of variation 1. to variation 1 is shown in the very first 4 notes. According to the way this bar is written, we might play it like this. But again, as we see so often in Piobaireachd, the 2 short notes are not played the same length. The second short note we're going to swell just a little bit. Then we'll have a little pause before the double echo on E. Bar 3, different notes, same expression. It's a very subtle phrasing of these 4 notes all the way through this variation. That line repeats. Line 2 is a little different. Our D throw is back. In this bar, I'm almost playing the 2 short notes the same length. It's just what the bar asks for to me. And again, a pause before the double echo. Line 2, bar 3, same expression. Line 3, bar 1, same. And then bar 3 in line 3, make as dramatic and majestic as you can. One additional point to make about line 2, we have a D throw in line 2. We have 2 ways of playing a D throw. We can play what I would call a standard light music D throw, which is a heavy D throw like this. Or we can play the light D throw that most people play in Piobaireachd. There is a video on this channel that goes into both kinds of D throws. You might want to look it up if you're not familiar with them. Okay, let's listen to variation 1 once more with the transition in and out, and then we'll move on to variation 2. I call this variation variation 2. In fact, it's what we call the variation 1 doubling. Doubling means it's the second time through the variation. The variation is played twice. The first time is called the singling, the second time is called the doubling, and the doubling has a few minor changes that make it a little bit different from the singling. The variations are extremely similar, but very slightly different. And there's a slight tempo change as well. Let's listen to variation 1 doubling along with the transition from variation 1 and the transition out of variation 1 doubling. As you can hear, we're getting a little bit of tempo going now. The first thing I want you to be aware of is the very first note change from low A to C in bar 1 with the D grace note on it. I mentioned this earlier, and I think it's really important that you make sure you're not getting a crossing noise in that note change. It's one of the most common places for us to have crossing noises. Second thing I would like you to do is remember your 2-bar phrasing. Slightest, almost imperceptible pause after bar 2 and after bar 4. Think it more than you actually do it with your fingers. If you overdo it, it ruins the flow of the tune. So be subtle. Don't play the short notes too short. Don't snatch at them, don't make them clip. Keep them well enunciated. So, in general in this variation, think of the tune in phrases, keep it moving, and take great care in how long or short you play the short note. Let's listen to this variation one more time. That is the first half of the company's lament. You can get more information and instruction on this tune and on pibroch in general in my book Pibroch Fingerwork, which I published in 2013. It contains exercises that will help you learn all the pibroch technique, and in fact this tune, The Company's Lament, is covered in Pibroch Fingerwork. I encourage you to get it from a dealer near you. We will do the second half of The Company's Lament, the technical variations, the Torlua tripling, the Torlua, and the Crunlua in the next video. Until then, this is Jim McGillivray at the Pipe Box wishing you good piping.